The sky above Geneva split open without warning, not with fire or thunder, but with a silence so deep it swallowed sound itself. One moment, the city hummed with evening traffic and distant laughter. The next, every screen, phones, billboards, satellites, even wristwatches, flickered and died, then rebooted with the same message. It was not in any human language, yet every person who saw it understood it instantly, as if the words had been carved directly into their minds. You have 7 solar cycles to surrender. Your planet will be absorbed into the Virex conquered. Resistance is extinction, the message repeated. No signature, no face, just cold, flawless certainty. Panic did not erupt immediately. First came disbelief, then a slow, creeping dread that spread faster than any virus. Within hours, governments convened emergency sessions. Military bases went to maximum alert. Fighter jets screamed across skies already choked with commercial flights trying to land. But no one fired a shot. No one even knew where to aim. The Virex Armada had appeared beyond Neptune's orbit. Hundreds of ships, each larger than cities, gliding in perfect formation like a school of obsidian whales. Their hulls absorbed light. Their engines made no noise detectable by human instruments. They simply were. And they watched. In a quiet coastal town in Portugal, Elias stood on his porch watching the ocean. He had once worked at the European Space Research Hub, studying deep space anomalies. He'd been retired for 5 years, content with books, tea, and the rhythm of tides. But when the message came, he knew what it meant. Not just invasion, erasure, the Virex didn't conquer. They consumed, assimilated, rewrote civilizations into silence. He received a call that night. No number. Just a voice he hadn't heard in a decade. They're waiting for a reply, the voice said. Elias stared at the stars. Then let them wait. No, the voice insisted. They expect fear. They expect begging. Or defiance. Either way, they win. But if we say nothing, if Earth goes quiet, Elias understood. Silence wasn't surrender. It was a question. By dawn, a secret network activated. Not through official channels, those were too loud, too monitored, but through old academic lines. Retired engineers, radio hobbyists, submarine cable technicians, and AI ethicists who'd long warned about over-reliance on visible communication. They called themselves the Stillness Group. No leader. No hierarchy. Just people who believed that sometimes the loudest answer is no answer at all. Meanwhile, the world unraveled in plain sight. News anchors shouted over maps showing the Virex fleet's slow advance. Religious leaders declared the end times. Billionaires booked seats on private rockets, only to learn that no launch pad would open without government clearance, which no government dared give, for fear of looking like they were fleeing. In Nairobi, a young signal analyst named Mira sat in a dim server room beneath a university lab. Her job was to monitor deep space chatter for scientific anomalies. Now she tracked the Virex. Their comms were unlike anything human. No radio waves. No laser pulses. Instead, they used quantum-entangled particles to send messages instantly across light years. Unhackable, undetectable, except for faint gravitational ripples when they transmitted. Mira noticed something odd. Every time Earth broadcasted, pleas for peace, military alerts, even social media rants, the Virex fleet adjusted its formation slightly. Not to attack, to listen. They were studying human reactions like scientists observing lab rats. She sent her findings through an encrypted mesh network to an old professor she trusted. Within hours, the message reached Elias. They think we're predictable, Elias murmured to himself. They think noise equals life. He made a decision. At exactly 0300 UTC, every nation on Earth received a single directive from a coalition of shadow advisors. Go silent. Not a full blackout. That would be suspicious. But a gradual fade. Reduce non-essential transmissions. Power down orbital relays. Switch to fiber optics and landlines. Broadcast only static on public channels. Let the world appear to wind down not in panic but in eerie calm. It was impossible, and yet it happened. Within 2 days, global internet traffic dropped by 60%. Air traffic halved. Television networks aired only test patterns or old nature documentaries with no commentary. Social media went dark as influencers, politicians, and corporations followed the unspoken order. Even emergency services used coded light signals instead of radio. To the Virex, Earth began to look strange. Their scouts moved closer, deploying sensor drones near Mars. The drones reported atmospheric composition normal. Power grids active but minimal. No military mobilization. No fleet assembly. No evacuation ships, just stillness. Commander Valen stood on the command deck of the flagship Dawn's Maw. His four eyes narrowed. He had crushed 17 civilizations. All had screamed, bargained, or fought. None had simply, "Stop talking, is it a trap?" asked Kor, his young tactical officer. "Traps make noise," Valen replied. "This is emptiness." But emptiness unsettled him more than any weapon. Back on Earth, Elias walked through an empty city square. No crowds, no music, just whined through abandoned market stalls. In a hidden bunker beneath the Alps, the Stillness Group monitored Virex movements. They weren't building bombs. They were building illusions. False heat signatures, ghost radio echoes, drone swarms that mimicked bird flocks to confuse orbital scans. Mira, now working with the group, discovered something else. The Virex didn't just communicate with entangled particles. They also used low-frequency resonance, vibrations through space-time itself. If humans could mimic that frequency, not to speak but to hum, they might send a signal the Virex couldn't ignore, but that was for later. For now, Earth held its breath. The 6th solar cycle ended. 1 day remained. Valen ordered a deep probe incursion. 3 scout ships would enter Earth's atmosphere, land in major cities, and verify the silence firsthand. Elias received the alert. "They're coming down," he said. Mira nodded, fingers flying over a console. "Then we give them nothing to find." In Tokyo, New York, Cairo, and Sao Paulo, automated systems triggered. Streetlights dimmed. Traffic signals froze on red. Water pumps slowed. The cities didn't die. They pretended to sleep. As the Virex scouts descended through the clouds, their sensors painted a world without pulse. No voices, no music, no cries of fear. Just the wind, the rain, and the slow turn of a planet that refused to speak. Aboard the lead scout, Kor watched the readings. "It's like they vanished," he whispered. But Elias knew the truth. Humanity hadn't vanished. It had chosen a different kind of strength. And in the silence, something new was being born. Not fear, not war, but a question hanging in the void, waiting for an answer the Virex might not be ready to hear. The Virex scouts landed in the dead heart of Chicago just after dawn. Their ships, sleek and black as polished stone, settled onto cracked asphalt without sound. No engines roared. No doors hissed open. The ramps lowered and armored figures stepped out, tall, with segmented limbs and faceless helmets that shimmered like oil on water. They moved in perfect silence, scanning the empty streets with devices that pulsed faint violet light. Buildings stood intact. Cars sat parked. Storefronts were untouched. But there were no people, no birds. Not even insects buzzed in the summer air. It was as if life had been vacuumed out overnight. One scout paused near a playground. A swing moved gently, pushed by nothing. The Virex tilted its head. Sensors detected no wind, no hidden mechanisms, just motion without cause. Back in orbit, Commander Valen watched the feed from the scouts. His fingers tapped the arm of his command throne. "Scan for underground shelters," he ordered. "Already done," Kor replied. No thermal signatures below 2 meters. No power draws, no ventilation. Earth appears. Hollow. Valen's eyes narrowed. He had seen fake cities before, decoys built by desperate species to lure invaders into traps. But those always had flaws. Mismatched shadows, recycled textures, unnatural silence. This felt different. This silence felt real. On Earth, deep beneath the frozen plains of Manitoba, Mira monitored the Virex movements from a control hub carved into solid rock. Around her, dozens of technicians worked in hushed tones, eyes fixed on screens showing every step the scouts took. They weren't hiding in fear. They were performing. Every empty street, every still car, every unmoving tree was part of a vast illusion. The surface had been prepped for weeks. Drones mimicked wildlife sounds at random intervals. Solar-powered decoys gave off faint heat. Even the wind was guided by hidden fans to rustle leaves just enough to seem natural, but never enough to reveal hiding places. Mira adjusted a dial. A block away from the scouts, a vending machine suddenly lit up and dispensed a soda can. It clattered to the ground. The nearest Virex turned sharply, weapon raised. But the machine went dark again. No pattern, no logic, Just noise without meaning. That'll mess with their pattern recognition AI, Mira whispered. Elias stood beside her, arms crossed. They expect order. We give them chaos wrapped in calm. Above ground, the Virex grew uneasy. Their sensors kept picking up anomalies, flickers of radio static that vanished when approached, shadows that moved when no light source changed, whispers in human languages that cut off mid-sentence. None of it made sense. And that was the point. One scout entered a library. Dust floated in sunbeams. Books lined the shelves. It reached out, touched a spine. The book fell open to a page showing a child's drawing of the solar system. The scout tilted its head again. It did not understand art, but it felt something, unease perhaps, or curiosity. Then, without warning, all three scouts froze. Their comms had gone dead, not jammed, not blocked, simply empty, as if the link to their fleet had been snipped by invisible hands. Kor's voice crackled in their helmets, then vanished. The scouts tried to reconnect. Nothing. They were alone. Panic, though they would never call it that, rippled through their ranks. For the first time, the Virex felt what humans had felt since the ultimatum: isolation. Back in the bunker, Mira smiled. Phase 2 is live. What the Virex didn't know was that humanity had spent the last decade studying alien signal patterns, not from real aliens, but from theoretical models. When the Virex arrived, their quantum-entangled comms left a faint echo in local gravity fields. The Stillness Group had built resonant dampeners, small, buried devices that vibrated at the exact opposite frequency, canceling out the signal like noise-canceling headphones. The scouts were cut off, blind, deaf. They regrouped in the center of the city, forming a tight circle. Their weapons glowed faintly, ready for ambush. But no ambush came, only silence, then a voice, not from a speaker, not from a person. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a soft, childlike hum repeating a simple melody. It was the tune of an old lullaby, broadcast through hidden speakers buried in lampposts, sewers, even park benches. No words, just sound. The Virex turned in circles, trying to locate the source. Their sensors overloaded. The melody wasn't on any known frequency. It seemed to exist outside physics. In orbit, Valen slammed his fist on the console. Get them out of there! But the dampeners held. The scouts remained trapped in their bubble of silence and song. Hours passed. The sun set. The city grew darker. The lullaby stopped. Then new sounds began. Footsteps, distant, approaching. But when the Virex turned, no one was there. A door creaked open upstairs in an abandoned office. They entered, weapons ready. Empty room. Dusty desks. A coffee cup still warm. They backed out slowly. Outside, a streetlight flickered on. Then another. Then a whole block lit up, bright as noon. The Virex shielded their sensors. When the lights died seconds later, one of their number was gone. No struggle. No alarm, just missing fear, cold and unfamiliar, settled into their cores. Back in the bunker, Elias watched the feed. We're not scaring them with monsters, he said. We're making them doubt reality, Mira nodded. If they can't trust their senses, they can't trust their mission. By midnight, only one scout remained. It stood in the middle of Lakeshore Drive, scanning the skyline. Its breathing, mechanical, rhythmic, was the only sound. Then from the lake, a ripple. A shape surfaced, humanoid, pale, watching. The scout raised its weapon. The figure vanished. The scout fired. The beam cut through mist, hitting nothing. Then its own weapon shut down. Its suit lights dimmed. Its last transmission before total blackout was a single, distorted word, not in Virex but in broken English. Why? Above, the Virex fleet hovered in tense stillness. Valen refused to send reinforcements. Sending more scouts would admit weakness, and weakness was unacceptable in the conquered. But Kor argued. Something is wrong down there. Not resistance. Something deeper. Valen ignored him. Instead, he ordered long-range scans of Earth's core. If humans were hiding underground, he would melt the crust and boil them out, but the scans returned strange data. Earth's magnetic field pulsed in irregular waves. Seismic activity showed no tunnels, no cities below, just rock and silence. In a hidden lab beneath the Andes, a geologist named Ren adjusted a final setting on a planetary resonator. We're not hiding under the ground, he told Elias over comms. We're making the ground itself lie. The resonator sent low-frequency pulses through tectonic plates, creating false seismic readings. To the Virex, Earth wasn't hiding life. It was geologically dead. Meanwhile, Mira made a breakthrough. She'd been analyzing the brief moments when the Virex comms flickered back online. In those gaps, she caught fragments of internal chatter. Not orders, arguments. One voice, young and urgent, kept repeating, "Though, they're not weak. They're waiting." That was Core. Mira isolated his signal pattern. If she could reach him directly, without alerting Valen, she spent the next 12 hours building a microburst transmitter, a device that could slip a single, silent data packet into the quantum noise between Virex signals. Not a message, just a seed. She loaded it with one thing, a recording of Earth's natural sounds, rain on leaves, whale songs, wind through canyons, a baby's laugh. No words, no demands, just life, unguarded and real. At 0400 UTC, she sent it. The packet vanished into the void. Core received it in his private comms feed. He almost deleted it as noise. But something made him open it. For the first time in his life, he heard Earth breathe. He didn't report it. He saved it. And in that moment, doubt took root in the heart of the Virex Concord. Above the silent planet, the fleet waited. The final solar cycle ticked toward zero, but Earth still said nothing. And in that silence, the invaders began to wonder if they were the ones being tested. The last solar cycle ended at midnight. Earth did not explode. No fire rained from the sky. The Virex fleet remained in orbit, unmoving as if holding its breath. Commander Valen had not given the order to destroy. Not yet. Something in the silence gnawed at him, not fear, but doubt. And doubt was a disease in the Concord. On the surface, the illusion held. Cities stood empty. Roads were still. The wind carried no voices. But beneath the crust, billions lived in quiet readiness. Hidden arcologies stretched deep into the earth, vast networks of tunnels, farms, schools, and hospitals, all powered by geothermal vents and shielded by layers of rock and quantum-dampening alloy. Light came from bioluminescent algae. Air was scrubbed by forests grown in vertical shafts. Water cycled endlessly through filtration routes. Humanity had not fled. It had folded inward, like a seed waiting for rain. Elias walked through one such corridor, his boots soft on recycled rubber flooring. Around him, people moved with calm purpose. Children studied star maps on tablets. Engineers monitored atmospheric pressure. No one spoke loudly. No alarms blared. Life continued, but in hushed tones, as if the planet itself were listening. Mira joined him near a central hub, her eyes tired but sharp. "Core hasn't responded to the sound packet," she said. "But he hasn't reported it either." "That's something," Elias nodded. "He's thinking. That's all we need." Above, the Virex grew restless. Valen ordered a new tactic, direct contact. Not scouts this time, but a full landing party. 20 elite enforcers armed with phase disruptors and neural suppressors. Their mission: enter a major city, find proof of life, and bring it back alive. They chose London. The dropships pierced the clouds at dawn, silent and fast. They landed in Trafalgar Square, where stone lions watched with empty eyes. The enforcers stepped out, weapons ready, sensors sweeping. Again, no people, no movement. Only pigeons, real ones, startled into flight by the landing, but this time the Virex were prepared. They activated resonance probes, devices that could detect heartbeats through walls, breath through vents, even brainwaves through rock. If humans were hiding, the probes would find them, except they didn't. The probes returned flatlines. No pulses, no heat. No signs of life within a 10-kilometer radius. Frustration boiled over. One enforcer kicked over a trash can. Inside, a small device blinked once, then emitted a soft giggle. The sound was human, childlike. It echoed off the National Gallery walls. The enforcers spun, weapons raised. Nothing there. Then from a nearby alley, a voice whispered, "Go home." It was in Virex tongue. The enforcers froze. How did humans know their language? They hadn't broadcast it. They hadn't captured any of their kind. The truth was, they didn't know the language. The voice was a guess. An AI-generated approximation based on intercepted signal patterns and linguistic modeling. Mira's team had spent weeks refining it. One phrase, one warning, delivered at the perfect moment. Panic flickered in the enforcers' ranks. They called for backup. but their comms crackled with static. The dampeners were stronger now, tuned to their specific frequencies. Then the ground trembled. Not an earthquake. A subway train, long abandoned, suddenly roared to life deep below. Its lights flared through grates. Doors slid open on empty platforms. The sound echoed like a ghost rising. The enforcers backed away. Their leader raised a hand for order, but his own helmet display glitched, showing a looping image of Earth from space, green and blue and whole, with the words "Remember this" in shaky handwriting. It wasn't real. It was a hack, slipped into their visual feed through a micropulse from a drone hidden in a double-decker bus. One enforcer fired at the bus. The beam passed through it like smoke. The bus wasn't there. It was a hologram. Reality began to fray. They saw figures in windows, faces pressed against glass, watching. But when they entered the buildings, the rooms were empty. Mirrors showed reflections that moved a second too late. Stairwells led to doors that opened into brick walls. Time itself seemed to stutter. Deep underground, Ren monitored the psychological feedback loop. Their stress levels are off the charts, he said. They're not just lost. They're questioning if they're awake. Elias watched the feed. Good. Let them feel what we felt when they gave us the ultimatum. But the strain was taking its toll on Earth, too. Power reserves in the arcologies were dropping. The dampeners, the holograms, the resonators all required massive energy. Food stocks were stable, but morale was thinning. Some whispered that silence had gone on too long, that they should fight even if it meant death. Mira heard those whispers. She knew they couldn't hold forever. That night she made a decision. She would go to the surface not to fight, to leave a message. She suited up in a light stealth suit, its surface coated with adaptive camouflage. With two others, Lena, a botanist, and Joran, a former stage actor, they took an old maintenance lift to a hidden exit beneath Hyde Park. The city was colder than she expected. Rain fell softly. She moved like a shadow, placing small devices on lampposts, benches, and bus stops. Each device contained a single seed, genetically engineered moss that glowed faintly blue and grew only in clean air. A sign that life still cared for this world. Then, in the center of the park, she left something else. A music box. It was old, made of wood, wound by hand. Inside, a tiny cylinder played a simple tune, the same lullaby from Chicago. She set it down near a bench, pressed the key, and vanished back underground before the Virex patrols swept the area. Hours later, an enforcer found the music box. It played softly in the rain. The enforcer picked it up. The tune was the same one from before, but this time etched into the wood was a symbol, a circle with a dot in the center, the ancient human sign for here, not a threat, not a plea, just a marker. We are here. The enforcer did not destroy it. He placed it in his pack. When he returned to the dropship, his commander demanded to know what it was. A message, the enforcer said. What does it say? The enforcer hesitated. It says, we are not alone. Back on the flagship, Valen watched the report, his hands clenched. This was no longer a simple conquest. Earth was playing a game he did not understand. And games meant players equals. Kor stood nearby, silent. He had listened to the Earth sounds again. Whale songs, rain, laughter. He had never heard anything so. Free Valen turned to him. You believe they are still here? Kor met his gaze. If they were gone, why would they waste energy on music boxes and whispers? They want us to know they're watching. That means they have a reason to stay hidden, and that reason is stronger than fear. Valen's eyes narrowed, or it's a final trick before they die. But even as he said it, his voice lacked conviction. Below, in the dark warmth of the earth, Elias received word that the music box had been taken. He smiled faintly. They're starting to listen, he said. Mira sat beside him, exhausted but hopeful. Now we wait. And Earth, as always, said nothing. But in the quiet, something shifted. The invaders no longer saw a dead world. They saw a mirror, and in it their own uncertainty staring back. Tension spread through the Virex fleet like a slow poison. What had begun as a simple conquest now felt like walking through a dream that refused to end. Reports from the surface grew stranger. Enforcers spoke of voices in their helmets, of reflections that blinked when they did not, of objects appearing and vanishing without cause. None of it made sense. And in the conquered, sense was law. Commander Valen called a war council. The chamber was dark, lit only by the cold glow of star maps. Around the table, senior officers stood rigid, their armor polished, their silence heavy. "The humans are not hiding," Valen said. "They are testing us." A grizzled officer named Dravo scoffed. "Testing? They are insects. Burn the surface. Boil the oceans. Let ash be our answer." But Kor stepped forward. If they were insects, they would have screamed by now. Or fled or fought. They have done none of these. That is not weakness. That is choice. Choice? Dravo sneered. Choice belongs to the strong. They are prey. Kor turned to Valen. Then why do our scouts return shaken? Why do our sensors find nothing but ghosts? Prey does not haunt its hunter. Valen said nothing. He stared at the image of Earth on the main screen. Blue, calm, silent. He remembered the music box. The symbol. The lullaby. It made no tactical sense. And that was what frightened him most. Below, in the deepest arcology beneath the Siberian tundra, Mira studied the latest Virex comms intercept. The fleet's internal network was fracturing. Arguments flared in encrypted channels. Some officers demanded immediate bombardment. Others, younger ones, questioned the Conquered's right to erase a species that refused to play by their rules. One message stood out. It was short, sent from a low-level comm node near the engineering bay of the Dawn's Maw. It read, "What if silence is their weapon?" Mira traced the signal. It led to Kor. She showed it to Elias. He's not just doubting. He's looking for a way out. Elias rubbed his temples. If we reach him now, we might turn an enemy into an ally. But if we're wrong, we give Valen proof that we're still active and that we've been listening. It's a risk, Mira said. But silence only works if someone is willing to hear it. They decided to act not with words, not with demands, but with a single unarmed gesture. They would send a shuttle into orbit. No weapons, no crew, just a vessel carrying a data core filled with human history, art, music, science, stories of kindness and failure, of building and healing, not just war. And one final message. We chose silence not from fear, but from hope you'd listen beyond words. Building the shuttle took 3 days. It was cobbled together from old cargo pods and civilian tech, painted white with no markings. Its engines were set to emit only a soft harmonic tone. A frequency Mira had discovered matched the natural resonance of Virex communication crystals. Not a signal. A song. The launch window was narrow. A solar flare would mask its heat signature for exactly 47 minutes. If they missed it, the Virex would detect and destroy it before it cleared the atmosphere. At 0200 UTC, the shuttle lifted from a hidden silo in the Gobi Desert. It rose slowly, silently, its thrusters muffled by acoustic dampeners. On board, the harmonic tone began to play, a low, steady hum that vibrated through space like a heartbeat. In orbit, Kor was reviewing damage reports from the London incursion when his console pinged. An anomaly, a small object human-made climbing through the ionosphere. No weapon signature, no comms burst, just sound. He flagged it immediately. Unknown vessel approaching. Non-hostile profile. Valen appeared on the command deck. Destroy it. Why? Kor asked. It carries no threat. Because it dares to rise, Valen snapped. Because it breaks the silence they promised. Kor hesitated. Then he did something no Virex officer had ever done. He disobeyed. Hold fire, he ordered the weapons team. I will intercept it myself. Before Valen could protest, Kor launched in a fast scout craft. He matched the shuttle's speed, circling it like a bird around a strange seed. The harmonic tone filled his cockpit. It was not aggressive, it was curious. He docked, entered, found the data core glowing softly in the center of the empty cabin. No traps, no tricks, just information. Back on the Dawn's Maw, Valen watched, furious. Bring it to me, he commanded. But Kor transmitted a single word over open channel. Wait. Then he plugged the core into his ship's system. What he saw changed everything. Images flooded his mind. Not of armies or bombs, but of hands planting trees, of children drawing stars, of people sharing food after disasters, of scientists working for cures, not weapons, of music made from scrap metal and hope. He saw humans weep for strangers, build libraries in war zones, send messages into space just to say, we are here. This was not a species that hid because it was weak. It hid because it valued life too much to waste it on a fight it could not win. And in that moment, Kor understood the silence. It wasn't emptiness. It was respect for the Virex, for Earth, for the chance that understanding might still be possible. He made his choice. Instead of returning the core, he copied its contents and sent it, encrypted but untraceable, through the fleet's internal network. Not to everyone, just to those he knew had doubts, to engineers, to medics, to young pilots who had never seen a world burn. Within hours, the data spread like wildfire. Dravos found out. He stormed the command deck. "Treason!" he roared at Kor. "You have infected the fleet with human lies." Kor stood his ground. "I showed them truth, and truth does not obey orders." Valen watched, torn. Part of him wanted to execute Kor on the spot. But another part, the part that had listened to the lullaby, that had kept the music box, wondered if the Conquered had been wrong all along. That night, 3 ships in the outer ring powered down their weapons, then 5, then 12. A quiet rebellion began, not with guns, but with questions. On Earth, Elias and Mira watched the energy signatures shift in orbit. Ships were changing formation. Not to attack. To shield. "They're splitting," Mira whispered. Elias nodded. The silence worked. Now comes the hard part, because silence had bought time. But peace would require trust. And trust had to be spoken. For the first time in weeks, Mira opened a channel, not to broadcast, but to listen. She tuned into the low-frequency band where the harmonic tone still played from the abandoned shuttle. And there, faint but clear, came a reply. Not in words, not in threats, just a single note, matching theirs, from a Virex ship, Kor had answered. And in that shared sound, 2 species stood on the edge of something new. Not war, not surrender, but the fragile beginning of something neither had dared to imagine. The note hung in space like a single drop of rain after a long drought. It was not loud. It did not demand attention. But it was there, clear, steady, and human in its simplicity. And from the Virex ship, another note answered. Then another. Not in harmony, not yet, but in echo. A conversation without words had begun. On Earth, Mira held her breath as the signal repeated. She turned to Elias, her eyes wide. They're responding. Elias watched the readout, his face calm but his hands trembling slightly. Not all of them, he said. Just one. But one is enough. That one was Kor. From his scout vessel, he had broadcast the note using the same harmonic frequency the human shuttle had used. It was a risk. If Valen traced it, he would be branded a traitor. But Kor no longer cared. What he had seen in the data core, the paintings, the poems, the quiet acts of courage, had rewired something deep inside him. He no longer saw humans as prey. He saw them as mirrors. The rebellion grew quietly. More ships powered down their weapons. Some drifted away from the main fleet, forming a loose ring around Earth like a protective shell. Others stayed but refused new orders. Phelan raged, but his authority cracked like thin ice. The Conquered had always ruled through certainty. Now doubt had taken root, and it spread faster than any command. Then came the first landing that was not an invasion. A small Virex transport descended toward the coast of Norway, not with weapons but with its ramp open and lights dimmed in what human analysts guessed was a sign of peace. It settled on a frozen fjord far from any hidden archaeology. No soldiers emerged, only one figure unarmed wearing a simple gray suit instead of armor. Elias watched from a hidden observation post on a nearby ridge. He gave the order. No response. No movement. Let them come to us. The Virex figure stepped onto the ice. It stood for a long time, looking at the mountains, the snow, the quiet sea. Then it knelt and placed something on the ground, a smooth black stone with a single groove carved into it. A symbol, not of war, of offering. Hours later, a human team approached. Not soldiers, scientists, medics, artists. They wore no uniforms, only warm coats and open faces. They stopped 10 meters away. No one spoke. The Virex rose slowly. It made a gesture, hand over its chest, then extended outward. A universal sign, I come in peace. Mira was among them. She stepped forward and placed a small wooden flute on the ice between them. It was carved from an olive tree grown in a sunlit archaeology garden, a gift of sound. The Virex picked it up gently. It did not know how to play it, but it held it like something precious. Back in orbit, Valen watched the exchange through a long-range lens. His officers waited for orders. Destroy them. Arrest Core. End this shame. But Valen said nothing. He saw the flute. He remembered the music box. He thought of the data core, the images of humans holding each other in storms, building schools in ruins, sending songs into the dark just to say they existed. He turned away from the screen. Let them talk, he said, his voice low. I will not be the one to silence this. The truce held, more landings followed. Not in cities, but in quiet places, deserts, forests, shores. Humans and Virex met with no weapons, no translators, only gestures, drawings in the dirt, shared food and music. The Virex learned to smile with their eyes. Humans learned to read the subtle shifts in their posture. Trust grew slowly like moss on stone. Core became the bridge. He spoke to both sides, not as a soldier, but as a student. He asked questions. Why did humans paint? Why did they save animals they could not eat? Why did they forgive? And humans asked him, why did the conquered conquer? Was it fear, boredom? A belief that silence meant weakness. We thought silence meant death, Core admitted one evening, sitting by a campfire with Mira and Elias. We did not know it could be a choice. Elias stirred the fire. We chose silence because we did not want to become like those who threaten to destroy what they do not understand. Core looked at the stars. Then perhaps we have both been wrong. Weeks passed. The Virex fleet began to change. Some ships left, returning to their home systems with new questions. Others stayed, offering help. They shared technology to clean Earth's oceans, to heal damaged soil, to power the arcologies without draining Earth's core. In return, humans shared stories, music, and the simple joy of watching a sunrise together. The last of the surface illusions were dismantled. Cities lit up again. Birds returned to skies no longer filled with fear. Children played in parks where Virex scouts once stood confused and alone. One morning, Elias stood on a hill overlooking Geneva, the same place where he had first seen the sky split open. Now the sky was clear. In the distance, a Virex transport hovered gently, helping rebuild a hospital. On the ground, human and Virex engineers worked side by side, laughing over a shared mistake in wiring. Mira joined him. Do you think it will last? She asked. Elias smiled. Peace isn't something you build once and forget. It's something you choose every day, just like silence was. Below, a young Virex child, brought by its parents who had chosen to stay, ran through a field of wildflowers, chasing a butterfly. A human child joined it, showing how to cup hands gently so the butterfly could rest without harm. No one gave orders. No one demanded proof. They simply were, and in that quiet coexistence, something new bloomed. Not victory, not surrender, but understanding. The war had ended not with a bang, not with a treaty signed in blood, but with a shared breath after a long silence. Two species, once strangers, now neighbors, learning that the loudest truths are often spoken without sound. And Earth, at last, was not just alive. It was heard.